Hey there, personal health and wellness. As promised, this is our financial literacy video, and I'd like to introduce to you my lovely wife, also the Repass family Chief Financial Officer. This is Miss Haley Repass. She is also our Chief Accounting and Business Instructor at Carl Albert State College. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
And we're going to talk a little bit about occupational health as well as financial health. And I am not an authority on this by any means, but I do want to connect you to people who are. Again, these are things that we have found to be very effective. We're going to talk from a standpoint of how we run our household, but also from some perspective that why we have chosen the careers that we have, how we kind of got the jobs that we are in. And, you know, when you look at this slide, you're probably back there thinking about what is your occupation going to be? Where am I going to work? These are like great questions to think about.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And when I have thought about where I landed, I went to school here at Carl Albert. She went to
I
school
did.
here at Carl Albert. It's just been an incredible blessing to be able to come back here.
Yes, it has.
And so, what do you think is your draw to come back here and to be a teacher at Carl Albert?
Well, the biggest thing for me is to be able to take something that I love and that interests me and engages me, and to be able to pour that into someone else. So
Mhm.
it's a lot about being able to constantly be involved in that area, but to be learning about it and then to see others who are coming up and are interested in that, and we can have discussions about that. They can learn from that. I can learn from talking to them. I can learn new things. But it gives me a sense of fulfillment when I'm helping them to establish their
Yes.
foundation as they go on into the business world. And a lot of my students do become accountants and CPAs. So
Yep.
it really helps to be able to know that you're kind of in on the groundwork of that.
So we live in Poto now.
Mhm.
We both grew up in LaFleur County, and so we're native to this area. That's definitely a connection to come here and work. But there's a big draw to leave here
Mhm.
and to go out and to do
Mhm.
like the big city thing, to work in the private sector. We've both done that. Why do you think that we're now kind of back here where we started? What about the where in our occupation is what's attractive to you in that?
Well, there's always something about the going home factor. There's always going to be that part that it's home, and so it doesn't really matter, excuse me, where it is if it's home. But the other part is geographically for us, where home happens to be. I find a lot of joy and fulfillment from the landscape that we're located in, just the nature and the activities and
Yeah.
the somewhat slower pace. So just that you can go outside and you can enjoy the world's highest hill, or you can go on a hike,
Hmm.
or you can go on a run, or you can take your kids to play somewhere. And so I teach that a lot in my classes too. That it's not all about the wages that you earn. It's not always a monetary value. That there is a different fulfillment. That there's also a quality of life that goes along with the standard of living.
Right. And like mentioned here, it's often thought that the more money you make, the more happiness you're going to
Mhm.
have. If you tuned in to the video about what brings true happiness, about social connection, then you were probably pretty impressed with the idea that is where true happiness comes from. And we get caught up in this where we feel like we have to um, basically value our worth in the dollars that we make. And that is an important thing, and I don't want to take away from that. But there are a lot of other opportunities, personal goals aligning with your company's goals, that really help to create a total sense of wealth. Now, you are our chief financial officer, and I would be remiss if I did not state that um, that is not just because of her knowledge, her skills, and her training, but also she has strength there, and she has focus there. And so, one thing that you have to do to kind of commit yourself to a healthy relationship is knowing what those person's strengths are and letting them work in those strengths, and they're giving to her gifts are clear to me that she can do these things. And so one of the things that I know as a husband is I'm not good there. So financially speaking, I would say that we hear Dave Ramsey talk about how income is your greatest wealth building tool. And we have a income, and you know it better than I do. So we've kind of listed some things financially speaking here.
Mhm.
What do you think about these 5 items, real quick, and then we'll kind of get into budget talk.
Okay. Well, I think absolutely, giving is such a big part, and it doesn't really matter if you are giving um, through your church or your religious organization, or you're just helping others. There's a lot of fulfillment that comes from giving. So that doesn't have to be something that is tied specifically to one way or another that you're giving, but finding a way to give back is what generally lends to a lot of satisfaction. And so
Mhm.
that's what we consistently find when we talk to people about their financial health, is that they want to get to that point where they're able to give back. So I always recommend that giving be a big part of it. Find something that you're passionate about, something that means something to you, and find a way to give back for the betterment of society. The next thing on here, I believe, is savings. When it comes to savings, we live in a country where at times we've had a negative savings rate, meaning that Americans on as a whole would spend more than they were making. So not only were we not saving, we were also spending more than we were actually bringing in. At this point in time, I think the latest stats in 2019 show that we do actually have a positive savings rate in this country right now, somewhere around
That's great.
8%. That's not every household though. So you've got, households with larger incomes that are saving, and that will kind of counteract. So we're still not to a point where everyone saves. So we all feel some more contentment, fulfillment when we've got a little bit of that nest egg put back. So we know if something comes along, we're prepared for it, or we can at least be prepared enough to handle it in the beginning and make a plan. And
Mhm.
we'll go more planning in just a little bit. The next one is investment. I do recommend that everyone consider investment of some sort. I'm not an investment expert myself, so I can't give you tons of information on that, but I can tell you that there are ways you can do that online. You can buy and sell stocks, you can trade online. There are different accounts you can open online, and you don't ever have to go and meet with anyone. I do recommend that you go meet with someone, but if you
Yeah.
wanted to learn more about that on your own, it is an intimidating topic. It's an intimidating subject to get started with. So there are ways that you can do that with small amounts online and get started before maybe you go in and start, making large investments.
So these are just some fundamental things, and to kind of be completely clear with our audience, as a married couple, these are not things we have always
Oh,
done
absolutely not.
or done correctly,
No.
right? So we weren't always giving of our income. We haven't always saved out of our income. Although you've kind of told me that's what we need to do, I kind of did other things with that money. We have just recently kind of started investments, but to kind of bring this in and close the loop here, we really have to look at what's going on with the budget.
Right.
And you are the budget planner. I've told this to a lot of classes. She has a white 3-ring binder, and at the kind of the end of each month, she comes approaching me, and like my face gets red, and my whole, like, you're going to learn about stress here in the next module, and like that's the exact thing that happens to me. Like, I'm going through all these physiological expressions of stress, and she doesn't know it, but I am, because she wants to talk money, and I'm not good at it. So what is it about budget? I mean, like, you're so good at this, and you have just a knack for it. Would you give our audience the keys that you believe are important when starting a budget?
Well, the biggest thing to me about a budget is it's a plan. And you have a plan for everything else that you do. You have a plan that you're going to get up tomorrow and you're going to take a shower and brush your teeth and you're going to get ready to go to work or go to school. You have a plan. You enrolled for classes and you know when the classes are. You make plans to get there on time. We have a plan for just about everything in our lives, but when it comes to money, it gets hard because
Hmm.
those stressors kick in. So a lot of times we find that people just ignore it, kind of hoping it'll go away, pay for things along the way, just see what comes our way today and tomorrow. And that doesn't usually work out. So a budget is just a plan. So if you have to take the word budget off of it, take that off of it, cut the stress out of this, let the budget release you from that stress rather than causing it. Because if you've got a budget, it's just a plan of how you're going to spend your money for that month or the week or the 6 month period. It may be a semester long budget if that's that may be how more students would want to look at this. But a budget has a plan of how all your money will be spent, so you're not all day every day deciding this is how I have to spend my money or can I do this or these are the decisions I have to make. The decisions are made for you.
Right.
So there's some major categories of the budget, and then when we go over those, everybody's is going to look a little bit different, but it's just a plan to help you.
It's an emotional thing too.
Absolutely.
We've talked about emotional health. It's also an intellectual thing. I'm constantly learning. When she presents the budget, I'm constantly aware of not only like where our money is going, but the purpose of it and
Mhm.
why it has to be here for this reason. And that helps me because it's very liberating, but also it's very intriguing to see kind of the function of our household.
Right.
So you have some items here, and it really gets kind of intense when I look at it. But for you, this is like easy stuff. So
Yeah, for me, it's a stress reliever to go in and look at this. So, the first thing that's on here are your monthly living expenses, and those are things that you just really can't do anything about. You can make better choices. We can all make better choices, but you're going to have rent and food and utilities and gas, the water bill, electric bill, whatever the things are that you're going to have in
cell
there.
phone bill now.
Your cell phone, um, we'll put your subscription services in there. I mean, who doesn't have a subscription service? But if you want to talk about cutting your expenses, that's one of the easiest ones right there. So if you're looking for that, you have your monthly living expenses, but those often include luxuries that
Oh
can
yeah,
be cut down during times that you need to or have to. So I would break it up into chunks, and I would make the first one something about your monthly living expenses. I would then include long-term expenditures. So if you know that something's coming, like let's say you're planning to pay tuition, you know that that's coming a little bit in advance. Don't wait until January 1st and then say, I have to figure out how to pay tuition. If your fall tuition's paid, you start saving a little bit. And so you just put a little bit back on each month or each week and let that build up so that it's there to work on tuition or Christmas or uh, a family vacation, whatever it is that are not monthly occurrences. They're not even um, things that are going to be small. They're going to be bigger expenses for
right,
you, but keep those going. The other one would be a short term or a one time expense. I keep a separate column in our on our budget,
right.
and that has things that you might not want to save every month for your vehicle tag. You might not want to save every month because that you've got to buy, or maybe you want to buy a book, maybe not a textbook, but just some luxury items that you don't have to buy, and you can go, okay, well this month I wanted to buy 3 books, and that's going to be $45. That's not something that you necessarily want to budget for all year. So you
Mhm.
can have some of those short term things that you include in their own separate column, and then those might even be things that your vehicle tag you have to pay for, but the books you don't. So if it doesn't work out for August, then you push it forward to September, and we do that a lot. We put down
We do that
everything
a
that we
lot.
want, and then decide what's going to happen for August, and if it's not all going to make it into the August budget, then it gets moved to September or October or November, and so you just it's making a plan, and then the budget tells you what you have to do, and you don't have to think about it.
Right.
The next one on there is giving. Did you have anything else on?
Well, I would like to point out on the short-term expenses, we've had several things get bumped and
Mm-hmm.
bumped and bumped and bumped. But when we have planned for vacations, and this has really come up more critically, especially with the kids,
Right.
that they have expenses as well. And so we know those are coming, but we will plan out our vacation,
Mhm.
like this one this year that we did. We planned out a year ahead of time, and we started saving. And the greatest thing that happened about our vacation is that our vacation did not follow us home, in the respect that we didn't owe on it once we got home, and that was really nice. And so a lot of people do say, well, a budget is restrictive and it's boring. But I keep coming back to the fact that people say that about the way I eat and my nutrition, because I eat a lot of the same things over and over and over. But to me,
Mhm.
it's very freeing because then I don't have to think about when I'm going to eat or what I'm going to eat. It's just there, and so it's very utilitarian, but it's also very effective and it's very clean and it leaves me feeling good. And I will consistently know how I'm going to feel off of it. Well, I'm going to consistently know how much money is there, and like I still have some money in my pocket. It's the middle of the month, and I was really pumped the other day when I was able to just buy a coffee that was 250. And that's not something that I do a lot, but it is something that I like to do every once in a while. And the money was just there, and I was like, I don't have to feel bad about this. But we look at these other items here, and it's intimidating to say that you're going to give some of your money away.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
um, I would say that we have definitely felt some
Mhm.
blessing from doing that. That it always makes me feel amazing to know that I'm participating in someone else's good,
Right.
especially if they're less fortunate. And there are a lot of ways to give, right? I
Oh,
mean, we
yes.
we give at the church. We
Yes.
we try to be percentage givers at our church, but there are also opportunities. I'm thinking of times where I see someone who's just acutely in need, a friend who's in need, and the ability to just go ahead and give in that respect
Mhm.
changes their life, but it also changes yours. Oops, look at that. And then we have to also consider this next part, and I'm not an expert saver. You are. Is there, like, on this giving and saving, is there percentages of our income that you're kind of like goaling out saying, hey, listen, this is the percentage
Mhm.
of giving we want. This is a percentage of saving. What do you think about that?
I think there absolutely needs to be some type of percentage, and it's not going to be the same for everyone. Some people, 2% may be the absolute most that they could save or give in a month. And for someone else, it may be 20% of their income that they could save. It may be 20% they could give. It just depends what stage of life people are in. So it's not anything that we want to be intimidating. We don't want anyone to feel guilty. But we want everyone to know that you have the power to do this. And so if you can save 1% of your income every month and that's all you can do right now, save it.
Yeah.
And then as you learn to make some adjustments, maybe in your long term expenditures or even your short terms, or maybe those monthly living expenses, you can kind of fine tune some of those things. Then maybe you can save a little bit more. Maybe you can give a little bit more. A general rule of thumb is always that 10% number.
Hmm.
For most people, that's pretty attainable. Um, but I would say that's typically an after college. That's I've had a little bit of time to get
Hmm.
working, kind of get my feet under me, after the maybe student loan debt kind of thing that we'll talk about. But 10% on each of those is a pretty good goal point. I don't want to say it's a starting point. We consider it a baseline, but it's you want to get to the baseline.
Right. And do you think, practically speaking, like if I'm going to save, I'm going to go old school with it and I'm going to stuff it in a jar,
Right.
or do you think it's
Maybe.
just a little better in a savings account where it's not as easily like reachable? What do you think there? Should people take the time to go out there and open a savings account where
Yes.
where it's committed, or is it cool for the jar?
If the jar works for you and you cannot touch the jar,
Hmm.
I've known
I
of
I will
people,
touch the
you'll touch
jar.
the jar. Don't have the jar if you're
I'll
going to
touch
touch
the
the jar.
jar.
I've seen it, and I've actually known people who would freeze their credit cards, so they would have to really think about using their credit card. They would have to thaw the credit card if they wanted to use it.
Yes.
I do recommend the savings account though at your bank because you can see it grow. You can't go and just grab that cash out. You at least have to go to the bank or make the electronic transfer or something. But another trick that a lot of people use is to have your checking account and your savings account at separate banks so that you can't just transfer money out of your savings directly into your checking and then swipe away on your debit card. Have it in a separate bank. So you have to actually make an effort to go and get that money
Hmm.
out of your savings. So, but yeah, I recommend the bank, but if you can put it in a jar and not touch it, maybe you like to see the cash physically, do that for a while.
Awesome. Well, to kind of tell this in, I want to look at debt. And when I want to talk about debt, I want to talk about specifically student debt.
Yes.
Now, student debt has some kind of mutations that have occurred where it's no longer just financial aid giving you a loan. Some students acquire a lot of debt from living expenses.
Yes.
They'll use a credit card and things like that. And we could give an entire video just dedicated to that. What I want to look at though here is, we have a lot of our audience who probably has taken out a debt. I did that. I used student debt to get me through my degree, and thanks to you, we were like paying it off like a mad person. Like as soon as it became available, and we had a budget, and we attacked it, and it took some time, but we were able to do that, and it was very freeing to do that. What's your thoughts on student debt from a perspective of household budgeting and things like that?
Well, I don't think student loans are a bad thing.
Okay.
Student loans are designed to help the students. It's designed to position students so that they're able to earn a higher income in the future. But what we don't want is to see students graduating and be paying on their student debt until retirement,
Right.
or 20 years of working. And it's common to see people in their 30s and even in their 40s who are still paying on student debt from their 20s. So that's the kind of thing that we want to avoid. Now, there are some degrees and there are some life circumstances and situations where that's just what happens, but it doesn't have to be the norm. Student loans are intended to pay for student tuition. They're not necessarily intended to cover all of those short-term expenses or
Spring break.
right, spring break, take a vacation, buy new
Yeah.
appliances. Sometimes we just get caught up in, I have this money, it's available to me, I can take it, spend it on whatever I want right now.
Right.
And we forget the long-term part of that is I'm eventually going to graduate from college. And when I get that job with a really great salary, I'm going to have to give a big portion of my take home pay every month to my student loans.
Right.
So we really want to encourage people to take that student loan and to live frugally, and to spend that student loan on tuition and basic living expenses. You might have to. If you have a family and you're not able to work during that time of going to school, there may be some things that are different,
Hmm.
just different life circumstances, but try to keep those to a minimum because you don't want to be paying on those.
Now you worked through college.
Yes.
I worked through college. It was painful.
Yes, it was.
It was taxing
Yes,
in
it
ways,
was.
but it's doable.
It is doable.
It is doable.
It's difficult, and it also changes things for those with or without a family.
Yeah. Yeah. So some really cool stuff. My sincere appreciation to my wife for taking time out of her schedule, coming over here today. Thank you. I hope that you really grabbed onto a few things out of this. There is a quiz located down below. It's just some simple things that she talked about and I talked about. But moreover than that, I hope that you give this some consideration. If you would like more on exactly how we structure our budget, we're happy to provide that, give you kind of a template of what it is that it looks like every month. You're just going to have to contact us personally. Either one of us, better to contact her. She can orchestrate that better, and she's very much willing to do that, especially for a student. I don't know anybody with a better heart for people or students, and certainly me, than this girl right here. So with that being said, I hope that you really found some value in this and that you see kind of what is really interesting about budgets and the freedom of budgeting and not the restriction. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.